Director Mueller, you've been asked many times this afternoon about collusion, obstruction of justice, and impeachment and the Steele dossier, and I don't think your answers are going to change if I ask you about those questions. So I'm going to ask about a couple of press stories, because a lot of what the American people have received about this have been on press stories, and some of that has been wrong, and some of those press stories have been accurate. On April 13th, 2018, McClatchy reported that you had evidence Michael Cohen made a secret trip to Prague during the 2016 presidential election. I think he told one of the committees here in Congress that was incorrect. Is that story true?
I can't go into it.
Got you. On October 31st, 2016, Slate published a report suggesting that a server at Trump Tower was secretly communicating with Russia's Alfa Bank, and I quote, akin to what criminal syndicates do. Do you know if that story is true?
Do not. Do not.
You do not?
Know whether it's true.
So did you not investigate these allegations which are suggestive of potential Trump-Russia?
Because I believe it's not true doesn't mean it would not be investigated. It may well have been investigated, although at my belief at this point it's not true.
Good copy. Thank you. As a former CIA officer, I want to focus on something I think both sides of the political aisle can agree on. That is, how do we prevent Russian intelligence and other adversaries from doing this again? And after overseeing counterintelligence operations for 12 years as FBI director, and then investigating what the Russians have done in the 2016 election, you've seen tactics, techniques, and results of Russian intelligence operations. Our committee made a recommendation that the FBI should improve its victim notification process when a person, entity, or campaign has fallen victim to active measures of attack. Would you agree with this?
It sounds like a worthwhile endeavor. I will tell you, though, that the ability of our intelligence agencies to work together in this arena is perhaps more important than that. And adopting whatever, and I'm not that familiar with legislation, but whatever legislation will encourage us working together. By us, I mean the FBI, CIA, NSA, and the rest. It should be pursued aggressively, early.
Who do you think should be responsible within the federal government to counter disinformation?
I'm no longer in the federal government, so
But you've had a long career, storied career, and I don't think there's anybody who better understands the threat that we are facing than you. Do you have an opinion as a former FBI officer? As to who should be the coordinating points within the federal government on how to deal with disinformation?
I don't want to wade in those waters.
A good copy. One of the most striking things in your report is that the Internet Research Agency not only undertook a social media campaign in the U.S., but they were able to organize political rallies after the election. Our committee issued a report and insight on saying that Russian active measures are growing with frequency and intensity, and including their expanded use of groups such as the IRA, and these groups pose a significant threat to the United States and our allies in upcoming elections. Would you agree with that?
Yes. In fact, one of the other areas that we have to look at are many more many more countries are developing capability to replicate what the Russians had done.
You alluded to making sure all the elements of the federal government should be working together. Do you have a suggestion on a strategy to do that to counter this disinformation?
Not overarching it.
Is this, in your investigation, did you think that this was a single attempt by the Russians to get involved in our election, or did you find evidence to suggest they'll try to do this again?
No, it wasn't a single attempt. They're doing it as we sit here. And they expect to do it during the next campaign.
Director Mueller, I appreciate your time and indulging us here in multiple committees, and I yield back to the ranking member if he has. I yield back to the chairman.
Under the impeachment resolution approved by the House, one viewer wants to know, does the GOP gain subpoena power with impeachment resolution.
Yeah, Anna, so it was a historic moment this week in the House. Only the fourth time in our 232 years under the Constitution we had an official vote recognizing procedures for an impeachment inquiry. Now, what are the big things the resolution does? First of all, authorizes the Intel Committee, Adam Schiff, to release depositions of those closed-door hearings that have been going on. We'll see the full transcripts of those soon. Second, as you said, we will have public hearings soon, where both parties will have a full chance to question those witnesses. And third, it requires Schiff to file a public report putting out there his conclusions, his recommendations. That report then goes over to the Judiciary Committee, which will then recommend articles of impeachment to the full House. Now, do the Republicans get subpoena power? Yes, but not really, because that subpoena power is subject to approval by the Democratic majority. You can bet if the Republicans want to issue a subpoena, the Democrats don't like it, it's going to be a no. This resolution, though, does have major political and legal implications. Politically, I think it helps Democrats take away the argument Republicans have been making that there's no process or it's been secret. And legally, this resolution should help Democrats go into court and enforce their subpoenas.
Okay, speaking of court, former White House counsel Don McGahn, as well as former Deputy National Security Advisor Charles Kupperman, they were both in court this week. Their hearings were about whether they have to testify before the House. So one viewer asked, legally, can Congress force executive branch officials to testify?
I think the answer there will be yes. It was quite a scene down in federal court in D.C. I went down to help cover it for CNN. We had two hearings happening at the same time in the same courtroom, in the same courthouse, in fact, on the same hallway, though. And what we saw in both cases was a battle of the branches. The legislative branch, Congress, saying we need this testimony, and the executive branch saying, but we're entitled to block it. The White House's argument here, the big argument, is absolute immunity, which is this fairly extreme argument that we have the power to stop executive branch employees from testifying. Now, the judge in the McGahn case in particular seemed very skeptical of that argument. And the judge in the Kupperman case noted the resolution, the impeachment resolution, had just passed, and he noted that that resolution actually strengthens Democrats' hands. So I do expect rulings in both cases fairly soon. I would guess that both rulings are going to go in favor of Congress. Then they'll be appealed to the Court of Appeals and potentially the Supreme Court.
There was major testimony in this past week. We heard from the National Security Council's top Ukraine expert, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman. He testified, again, behind closed doors, but we did have some access to some of his testimony that was made public. And one viewer wants to know, after he testified that he was told not to talk with anyone about the July 25th phone call between Trump and the Ukrainian president, the viewer asks, can Vindman be court-martialed for disobeying Trump's direction not to testify in the House?
It's a great question. I heard it a lot this week. And so I consulted with General Mark Hertling, who's one of our contributors here at CNN, of course knows as much about the military as anybody. Now, a court-martial, first of all, is a prosecution within the military system for violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Just for context, think the movie A Few Good Men. That is based on a real-life court-martial. That's sort of what it looks like procedurally. Now, General Hertling told me that all members of the military take an oath to defend the Constitution and to obey lawful orders, but emphasis on that word lawful, because they also have a duty to to report perceived misconduct up the chain of command, whether that is war crimes, violations of treaties or rules of engagement, or potential crimes, abuse of rank, or abuse of power. And so, as General Hertling said in conclusion, as a soldier, Vindman acted exactly as he should.
Quickly, your top questions this week.
So, first of all, will John Bolton testify in the House? The House wants him in there Thursday. His lawyer has said he won't go without a subpoena. If he gets a subpoena, will he obey it, or will he fight? Second of all, will there be any new factual developments that are strong enough to move House members off of party lines? That resolution was almost entirely a party line vote. And third, will the White House identify and execute a coordinated defense strategy? Up till now, it's been shifting almost by the hour, almost by the Trump tweet. Now this is very real, and the question is, will the White House come together and come up with a coordinated, coherent impeachment defense strategy?
Now, President Trump left behind his political troubles in Washington to go attend a mixed martial arts event in New York. Now, his arrival at Madison Square Garden provoked a loud and rather boisterous response. Have a listen. One pool reporter there said she had heard a lot of booing. There were some cheers, though, as well, but a lot of booing. Mr. Trump is no stranger to that kind of entertainment. One of his advisors told us the president likes a good fist fight, or at least watching one.
When President President Trump looked at the First Lady and smiled, and smiled, and smiled. Was he hearing what we were hearing? Lots of booing, plus an impeach Trump banner, and veterans for impeachment peeping out behind home plate, not to mention. Hey, but at least nobody threw any shoes at him like they did at President George W. Bush in Baghdad. Was that a ball or a strike? Practically all politicians get booed. For instance, Mike Pence, arriving at the Broadway musical Hamilton.
I nudged my kids and reminded them that's what freedom sounds like.
Freedom sounded like this when Hillary Clinton said Bernie Sanders wasn't a Democrat till he ran for president.
And well, it's true. It's true. You know it's true.
It's bad enough getting booed, but imagine getting booed on your birthday. That's what happened to Rudy Giuliani on his 74th birthday at his beloved Yankee Stadium.
The New York Yankees wish you a very happy birthday to Mayor Giuliani.
Happy birthday, Rudy, said the New York Post. President Obama even got booed by the Boy Scouts. No! After he sent a video message rather than appearing in person at the Scout Jamboree. No! But Obama turned boos to cheers at the Democratic convention.
There's Donald Trump. Don't boo, vote.
Candidate Trump got booed for trying to silence Jeb Bush.
Let me talk quiet.
How tough is it?
Times.
But don't bother trying to shush an entire stadium. You're destined to strike out big league. Jeannie Mose, CNN, New York.